Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, the second line from the top. Our Mishnah brings the following machlokes in regards to the kevesh shel para aduma. The Tanakama says it's the funds from the Shiarei HaLishka that is used for the kevesh of the para aduma. On that, Abba Shaul takes issue and he says, no, it's the Kohanim Gedolim's own funds, their own private money that is spent for the kevesh of the para aduma. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Chanino, Shachatis Gedoilo, Haiso Bivnei Kohanim Gedolim. He says there's a great arrogance amongst the Kohanim Gedolim. Sheyoiser Mishishim Kikare Zohov, Hayu Moitzin Bo. They would expend in excess of 60 Kikare Zohov. Shahaya kivsho shel para oimed v'lo haya echad mehem moitzi parosoi bekivsho shel avero. There would already be a pre-existing ramp to then take out the para aduma for the Kohen Gadol to use, and they would not use that ramp. They would build their own ramp so that they would have their own name, and their arrogance was such that they did not even pay attention and gave any regard to the previous kevesh from the Kohen Gadol beforehand. Says the Gemara, Hasi Rabbi Ula Kumi Rabbi Mona. Rabbi Ula, he asked in front of Rabbi Mona on that which was stated before in the name of Chanina. V'hotani, behold, it is taught, Shimon HaTzadik Shetei Paros Asa. Shimon HaTzadik was a Kohen Gadol, and he had two para adumas in his term when he was the Kohen Gadol. Loi bekevesh shahoitzi ezu, and yet he didn't use the kevesh that was for the first para aduma for the second one. Now, if it was only for his name, he had his name on it, and if it was something to disregard the previous Kohen Gadol, that he wasn't doing. Islach lemeimar, will you say Shimon Tzadik Shachatz? Haya, was he somebody who was arrogant? After all, Shimon HaTzadik, the great Kohen Gadol, Mishari Knesset Gedoyla. Ask the Gemara, my Kedoin, if so, what is indeed the reason for why he did such? And why is it that all the Kohanim Gedolim were noiheg to then expend their own funds at such a great expense for the kevesh of the para aduma? Answers Gemara, Al Shem Maila Hi Bepara, because of the great significance of the para aduma. Silsul Hi Bepara, they gave great kavod for the para aduma. In other words, people were being lax in regards to the tuma of the para aduma. They wanted to show the great expense and value of the para aduma, that people should be more careful in regards to being metameh chas v'sholom the para aduma before it was already then put into place. The Gemara brings the Braisa Tani zizin v'ksolim hayu yotzim bekan umikan. There were beams and walls along the sides of the ramp. What for? Says the Gemara to explain. That the Kohanim should not then peer out and then have their bodies then overlook places that might, in fact, metame them. While they're on the kevesh itself, that ramp itself was situated in such a way that there was no problem of any tumah because the way it was built. However, if they would go beyond and put their bodies beyond the ramp by peering to the right or to the left, they could indeed become tamei as a result of an oihel. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva Omer Mistakrin. Here we have Mistakrin. Here we have a machlokes. Rabbi Yishmael said that with the excess of the oils, the wine, and the flour, he says the hekdesh will take that which was theirs, buy that cheaply, and then sell it for a profit. On that, Rabbi Akiva took issue and says the Beis Hamikdash does not go ahead and do business because ein aniyus makom ashirus. It's not appropriate for the Beis Hamikdash to try to seek profit by selling these things. The Gemara now explains the shita of Rabbi Yishmael, why he did say that hekdesh can then make profit. When is this so? Qualifies. Ella imrotze yehefseid shaloi the haschar lehekdesh mutter. This will be specifically qualifying that when he will then have the loss and only a gain will be for hekdesh, does Rabbi Yishmael himself say that you can do business. But short of that, even Rabbi Yishmael would agree that it would not be done in the Beis HaMikdash. Kehada bar zmina is pakod gabe medal de yasmin. Like the precedent of bar zmina, who had money of Yesoimim that was given to him as a deposit. Also, Vishal Rabbi Mana, he came and he asked Rabbi Mana, and he asked him, can he use this money to go ahead and do business with it, make a profit, and then benefit not only himself, but also the Yesoimim? Omar lei, Rabbi Mana said to him, in boys, if you want, dai ha'afseide didoch ve'agro detarvichun shari. If you indeed accept the loss upon yourself and the gains to be split between you and the Yesoimim, then it is mutter. Now, normally you'll say this is a problem of ribis, because if you have somebody who just gives money to somebody to invest in without any taking possibility for a loss, no risk whatsoever, only the gains, so then essentially it's a loan. He's going to get back his money, plus he'll get a profit. So you have to say over here that they were save a special dispensation for the Yesoimim, that this is not an issue, because since it's only an avak ribis, it's a ribis derabanan, they waived the issue of the ribis over here, derabanan, in order to benefit the Yesoimim. Rabbi Chia bar Ado is pakid gabe modal de yasmin. Also, he had a situation when there was money that was deposited by him that belonged to Yesoimim. Va'avi kain, and it's taught over here that he did the same thing. He made such a venture that if there would be any loss, he would then suffer the loss, but all the gains, they would split together. The Mishnah said, in regards to Moiser Peiros, Rabbi Yishmael's shita was that the Moiser Peiros go towards the Keit HaMizbeach. That's the shita of Rabbi Yishmael. So the Mishnah Gemara comments, what is this Peiros, Moisar Peiros referring to? Masisim de Rabbi Yishmael, this Mishnah is Rabbi Yishmael. The Rabbi Chia bar Yosef posta masnisa. He explained the Mishnah, Moisar Peiros char lehekdesh. In other words, the Moisar Peiros was really a continuation of what he said earlier in the Mishnah, when he said that the hekdesh can do business with the oil and the wine and the flour. So it says, now the Moiser Peiros, what will we then be using for that profit? Keit HaMizbeach, for the communal oilos that would be put on the Mizbeach when the Mizbeach would be bottled. That's called Keit HaMizbeach. He goes on to explain, Moisa Nisachim Zu So Revis. The Moisa Nisachim, however, that refers to So Revis. So Revis is that when there would be a vendor that the Beis HaMikdash would buy from, let's say flour or oil or wine, so they would make a certain price, and no matter what would fluctuate, it would always be Hekdesh Yadai al Halyoina. The Beis HaMikdash would always have the upper hand. So for example, if indeed it was first one seller for 3 saw, that's what they made up, and then ultimately a seller can buy 4 saw when it was delivered. So then the vendor would have to provide Beis HaMikdash with 4 saw. Alternatively, if it started off that one seller again would require 4 saw, and then the price required at delivery 1 seller for 3 saw. So again, Yada Hekdesh al Halyoina, they would always get the upper hand. So if there was a difference, an additional, let's say, benefit, additional amount for the hekdesh, that's what we're calling over here, would be the Moisa Nisachim. Rabbi Yochanan Pasa Masnisa. Rabbi Yochanan, he explained the Mishnah differently. Moisar Peiros Zu Soravis. That's referring to the Soravis. Moisa Nisachim Lebeirutzim. However, the Moisa Nisachin that it mentions over here in the Mishnah, that's called Beirutzim for the heaped up over, when you then overbrim the measurements. So let's say there would be a measurement of oil or a measurement of flour, that which would overbrim higher than the amount of the kli. Since that's what was delivered to them, that was required, when they would actually make the carbon, they would level it out. There will be extra amount. That extra amount is what we're calling over here Moisa Nisachim, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Ask the Gemara, if that's the case, then Velesle the Rabbi Chia bar Yosef the Beirutzin. Are you going to say that Rabbi Chia bar Yosef does not have the concept Beirutzin? That's something everybody agrees to. Amar Rav Chizkiya, Ma de nofal leso revis. The answer is that no. When he said that which nafal lesa revis, he also included in that the beirutzin. So therefore, when Reb Chia bar Yosef was explaining the Mishnah, and he said moisar nesachim is sa revis, he included in that also the beirutzin. The Gemara explains, Al daite de Rabbi Chia bar Yosef necha. That which Rabbi Chia bar Yosef explained in the Mishnah, namely that he said that the Moisar Peiros is Schar Lehekdesh, and he explained therefore that the Moisar Peiros is called Sar Revis. So that's going to be very Necha, says the Gemara. Why? Because A Mistakrim B'Shel Hekdesh Afloi B'Shel Anim. For that which Rabbi Akiva said, that we do not do business with the Hekdesh, so then then it explains at the end of the Mishnah when Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina Sgan HaKohanim, it stayed over there, they don't agree with the Moisar Peiros. That meant to say that they are arguing on Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael said you can do business with the Moisar Peiros, the Hainu, with the oil and the flour and the wine that is extra, the surplus. And they said you cannot do business. So that works out very good, according to that explanation. But the way Rabbi Yochanan explains it, it's difficult. Why would they be choylek on Rabbi Yishmael? As follows: Omdu begimel yisapeg midalid. That which it says that if they made up a price, and indeed the price was one selah for 3 se'in, that was the price that the Beis Hamikdash made up with the vendor. And then ultimately, it was 1 selah for 4 se'in, for 4 saw, then the vendor would have to provide Beis Hamikdash with that extra saw. And therefore, certainly there was going to be an extra amount. Can you say that the Moisa HaPeiros they do not agree with? How could Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina, Sgan HaKohanim, argue with that? After all, this is something that the Mishnah says befeirush. So therefore, how can they argue with what we're calling the Moisar HaPeiros to be this Sar Revis? Answers the Gemara, Lo hayu moedim peiros b'keitz lemizbech. What they do with the Moisar Peiros, that which Rabbi Yishmael says goes to the keitz mizbeach, they disagree. Aval moedin hayu b'kli sharis, but they do agree that if there's extra money, then it would go towards the kli sharis. Ask the Gemara the following question: Ad kedoim beirutzei tzibur. Until now, we're speaking about the overbrimming that is for the tzibur. Va'afilu beirutzei yachid. Can you say the overbrimming also for the yachid, the individual? In other words, for the tzibur korbanos like the musafin and the korban tamid, that we understand. But what about for individual korbanos, the beirutzei yachid? Will we also say such a thing? The Gemara says lo nimsu kli shares be'ein mishel yachid. The Gemara asks, we don't find kli shares when it's going to belong to the yachid. Like it says in the following, the Gemara answers now the following Mishnah. Like we learned before, a woman who then makes a tunic for her son who's a kohen, she can do so, providing that she gives it to the tzibur. So we find over here that the individual, in this case the mother of the kohen, even though she gave it to her son, but if she would give it entirely with a leiv shalem to the tzibur, because that's the requirement for the bigdei kahuna, that it belongs to the tzibur, So that's a present. We say it's ksheira. She can do so. She's able to then give it with a leiv sholim. So too over here, since over here that we say that the individual can give it to the tzibur, then we'll say it's valid as well. So therefore, the overbrimming of the individual kli would also be something that's considered to be valid. So the Gemara now asks, Ad kidan beirut loch. Until now, we know that it comes to liquid types of overbrimming. But afilu beirut yavesh, would it also apply to those dry types of measurements? Was that also going to be overbrimming? Gemara brings the following proof that indeed it does. Ki ahid tanin and tamon, like it taught over there. Hanesachim shekodshu b'kli, the nesachim that were mekadesh with the kli. Here we're talking about flour for the menachos. V'nimsa hazevach posel, and then it was determined that the carbon that the nesachim would go towards became posel. If there's another offering that requires nesachim, then you can go ahead and bring the nesachim with it. V'im lav, but if not, lano, leave it overnight. Yufsulu belina, and then it'll be posel belina overnight. In other words, from here we see that indeed that the entire contents of the kli, even though it is lach, will also become sanctified by the kli shars, even if it's going to be something that is overbrimmed. And that is the conclusion of the Gemara.